Hey, Shalom, Markins of Akama Kapash from GMS London, giving all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bashem Chachwadash. Want to give double honors unto the elders, the apostles of GMS, and Shalom out there to the hopeful, elect Christian is truth in all sincerity. Back again with another video, and I'm going to title this one, The West is About to Hurt Even More. And not just the West. A lot of people are going to be hurt by this, right? All this, this war that's going on between Iran and Israel and the US, right? Because there's a certain important infrastructure that is required by the rest of the world for to get the goods around the earth, right? Like the oils and all these different types of things, right? It's gonna cause everyone knows this now. Right? It's gonna cause prices to go crazy. We've seen it already happen, right? The price of oil and all these things they're going up, they're rocketing, right? Which means these things are gonna become very, very expensive, right? Things are gonna become way more expensive, right? And these things are being used as part of Iran's war, right? Purposefully, right? So that they can cripple the American economy, and the West, basically, right? Because they depend on the Strait of Hormuz being open, right? For to transport, import, oil and other goods, right? They rely on that. Right, because I thought about it. I'm like, Rod, Europe is really the bottomless pit. It really is, right? When you hear about all the major things that these nations, they export, right, oil and all that kind of stuff, right? It's like they have it all in it, and Europe has next to nothing. Like they have, a little oil field, in the North Sea, but they got nothing. Really, Europe is dead. Right, they require all these other resources from around the world, and Iran plays a big part in the transport of goods that they need, right? So Iran's looking to cripple them financially, right, and fuck up all these economies and shit, right? And like I said, that's gonna be real bad for the average person. Not so much the elites. I mean, they can weather these storms in terms of financial problems, right? Because they got tons of money, right? But the average Joe living in these different places, man, they're gonna experience some serious hurt, right? And leave you in a fucked up, vulnerable position, right? Which Esau is gonna then capitalize and get everybody to take this mark, right? That's it's part of the game, part of the plans, right? So I just wanted to go over a few things. Bro's been posting in the chat and stuff like that. We've got this these little graphics or whatever, right? I'm just showing you, what's happening, basically, right? And then we're going to bring some scriptures out to show this is all prophecy, right? And you men are going to get crushed by this war that started, between Iran and Israel and the US, right? So projected global food prices 26 to 27 and beyond, right? As if they get that far, right? So, step one, energy shock. So Qatar LNG, liquefied natural gas, shut down. And Strait of Hormuz closure. Global gas prices spike. Historical precedent at 54%. Right? Big boy moves, right? Step two, fertilizer cost surges, right? Gas equals 70 to 90% of ammonia cost. Fertilizer production cost surge. Farmers reduce application. These men ain't gonna be able to do their farming, right? So they require this gas, right, to do their farming, right? So that means you ain't growing shit. Right, these nations that rely on Iran and the gas, or not just Iran, but this gas moving through this place, they ain't gonna be able to get it. Right, so you're gonna have to find it from somewhere else. But they've cut off a lot of avenues, man, because Russia will be there to sell it to you happily, right? But you man don't want to start fighting them, so it's like, well, you ain't gonna get no. Hey, he already threatened, he gonna stop supplying shit to Europe, possibly. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, well, yeah, Europe could be completely screwed. And these nations are already struggling. The European nations are struggling already, right? Because their growth is weak and man, like just economic downturn, basically. Right? Everything's getting expensive, right? So that's not going to fucking help, right? These people are going to get hurt, right? Hurt by all of this, right? Step three, yield impact. Reduced fertilizer. That's knock-on effects from this one, right? Reduced fertilizer equals 10 to 20% yield declines in staples. Global supply shrinks. Right, it's less for everybody, right? Step four, shortfall. inelastic demand and supply shortfall, inflation tool extends through 2027, right? Says timeline March 2026, shutdown maximize damage to planting season, right? Because we're in March now, right? So I guess it's for the United States specifically, right? Okay, this part is right. For the United States, right? From now, right? Risk profile, moderate to high, right? Because America is a rich nation, and it's not as bad as Europe, as you're gonna see. Risk profile high, right? America can self-sustain itself somewhat to some degree, but yeah, the average Joe people in America, you're gonna be biting the bullet. All right, you're gonna be losing your shit, basically, right? So since the 2026 forecast, plus 8% to plus 15%, right? Price shock, 6-month lag, right? So apparently what he's saying, within 6 months, we're going to see, the totalities of what's going on right now and the driven up costs, right? So price shock, 6-month lag, staples, bread, meat, drive inflation. Domestic shells advantage mitigates some risk, right? Because you've got your own, I think that's about the gas, isn't it? Shell. Right, you got your own suppliers in it, but it's still going to rise, right? And like I said, you're going to have to. It's going to affect the average American with their bills, right? And they're already down and out. They're already through. They're already complaining about how things are costly now, right? So yeah, that's not going to get any better, right? This is going to crush people, right? It says plus 3 to 5% or stabilization. Soil nutrient depletion limits recovery. Price remain elevated. Right? In Western Europe, i.e. over here, UK and Germany, all these different places, right? It says risk is high profile, right? Right. So 2026 forecast is between 12 and 20%, right? Worse. Higher sensitivity to gas import prices, right? Because there's FO in Europe. That's the truth. That's why it's worse for us. We got nothing. Right? It is the bottomless pit for real, right? We've got no heavy resources in anything. It's all over there in the other part of the hemisphere type thing, So higher sensitivity to gas import prices, higher energy costs in processing and transport, right? All this import and exporting that we need to do, right? Or mostly importing, right? Hardly any export really, right? Import a lot of shit, right? Energy is one of them, Continued innovation, inflation tail persists. Farmers prioritize high margin crops over staples, right? So they're just going to produce what's going to get them the most money, basically, right? And other things are going to be ditched, Critical risk factors and assumptions. Fertilizer availability. Permanent factory shutdowns create long-term deficits. Geopolitical contagion, even broader petroleum disruption spike transport costs. Yield devastation, upper bound 20% yield decline pushes prices even higher. Assumptions, limit substitutions and market integration means global shortages raise local prices. All right, conclusion, a perfect storm for global agri-food systems with significant inflationary pressure through 2027. And these people can't take anymore, man. These people are done. These people out here are through, man. They're all crying. So this is going to obviously cause a lot of anger, a lot of suffering, right? And obviously they're going to be demanding the government to do something about it. These men are going to be rioting in the fucking streets, protesting and shit over the war and over this and that. So, that's part of the game plan for Iran. Like they know this is what this is going to cause, and obviously, the ones started falling. All right. So that's what they're looking to do. Right, just one more article before we jump into the scriptures, right? And this is from Health Ranger from X.com, right? Let's see. Yeah, I'm gonna read the whole thing. Right, natural news, right? So it said you need to understand this new infographic. The key takeaway is that Iran's earlier strikes focused on US radar installations to blind the US military, while also destroying US bases in the region. Once that was achieved, Iran shifted to focusing on critical energy infrastructure across the Gulf state, asymmetrical economic warfare, unleashing a global economic fracturing that will be felt for years to come. Iran isn't choosing targets randomly. The targets are selected to cause maximum economic pain to the West by fracturing the US dollar debt empire that's tied to Gulf states, dollar-denominated energy markets, all of which have now been severed, by the way. Trump is playing checkers with thoughtless bombing campaigns and failed strategies. Iran is playing 5D chess with precision targeting that breaks the US empire's stranglehold over the region. All right, I can't zoom in. Right, but that's what Iran's basically doing right now. Right, they're looking to hurt the West by crippling them economically. Right, and like I said, these places are in a fragile state already. The West is in a fragile state already in terms of their economy and shit. So, this is really gonna hurt people, right? And like I said, this is all prophecy. So let's get into the scriptures now, right? And I will start here in 2 Ezra chapter 16. Let me start from verse. Let's start from verse 17, right? It says, woe is me, who will deliver me in those days? Okay, in the last days, right? In the latter days, which we're in now, right? The beginning of sorrows and great mournings, the beginning of famine and great death, right? Famine is on the menu, man. Or not on the menu. You know, food, right? You got famine, right? Famine is coming to the West. We know there's places in this world that experience famine. People of these places experience famine, right? But that's not something that you hear about in the West, right? But the West is going to experience that because of what's going to be going on, right? This is what the Lord's doing, right? So the beginning of famine and great death, the beginning of wars, and the powers shall stand in fear, the beginnings of evils. What shall I do when these evils shall come? Behold, famine and plague, tribulation and anguish are set as scourges for amendment, right? And this is what's occurring right now. But for all these things, they should not turn from their wickedness, nor be always mindful of the scourges, right? So despite the world almost coming to an end with this whole Iran America war, right? Because we know where it's going to head, right? All these it's going to turn into a world war. All the major players are going to be coming in and blowing each other up. So despite being on the precipice of a world war, these people are just going to be doing stupidness still anyway, right? Going out tonight and just do whatever the fuck they want to do, doing all kind of wickedness, right? Despite these things happening, despite seeing the signs of the end, these men are just going to do whatever, So it's true, right? It says, but for all these things they shall not turn away from their wickedness, nor be always mindful of the scourges. Behold, victuals shall be so good cheap upon earth that they shall think themselves to be in good case, right? So we saw it and felt it during the pandemic, all the inflation and shit, all the price rises, right? And how it caused people to suffer that was closer to the breadline. Even some of those that middle class, right? Because they're heavily in debt, they've got mortgages on cars and shit they got to pay for. They got brought down to the breadline because they didn't want to give up the goods, right? They didn't want to give up the car and the house, or whatever. So the man are going to fucking food banks and trying to survive, So people saw and felt that during that time, but things stabilized. Everyone thought it was cool, back to normal type shit almost. So they think themselves to be in good case. It's all good now. It's all right. Okay, it's not as cheap as we want it to be, but we can get by at the current level, right? But what does it say? Right, so behold, riches shall be so good cheap upon earth that they shall think themselves to be in good case, and even then shall evils grow upon earth, sword, famine, and great confusion. Right, is not evils growing on the earth? Things are not getting better. Right, things are not getting better. Right, you hope one day the right leaders are going to come in and save the nation and raise it up. Right, because every nation, everyone in the West at least, right, is waiting for this this leader that's going to bring back these nations back to their glory days. That means you acknowledge that you're far from your height, right? You're far from your peak, right? You men are suffering, right? And you're weak, right? Your nations are weak, right? So you kind of acknowledge this, right? But so you're waiting for this dude to come and save your nation, and no one's coming to save it, bro. Right? Nobody's coming to save it. It don't matter what right wing, left wing, red, blue. It don't matter. Ain't nobody coming to save your nations. Okay, this is the time of your end. Your empire, the Anglo-American Empire, the Edomite Empire is done. It's finished. And this is why you're suffering so much sufferings, right? That's why you're not catching no breaks, man. Okay, only more evils, right? Until your destruction, right? It says, for many of them that dwell upon the earth shall perish of famine, right? So like I said, that's a kind of an unheard of thing in these modern times, at least. People dying of famine, of starvation, right? It's a rare thing, right? That's something usually you hear about in what Esau calls the third world countries, right? But this is what this place is going to turn into, and you can see it's happening already. Like I say, every time I go outside my house, it's just beggars and homeless people, right? Like, it's getting more like that. So yeah, that's the future for what the short future this place has left. That's the future of it. More and more people out there begging, you know. So for many of them that dwell upon the earth shall perish of famine, and the other that escape the hunger shall the sword destroy, right? Because great violence is coming to the world, right? And the dead shall be cast out as dung, and there shall be no man to comfort them, for the earth shall be wasted, and the cities shall be cast down, right? The cities are going to be cast down, right? This is what is all going to come off from this, right? It's Revelation chapter 6, verse 5, right? And it says, and when he had opened the third seal, and I heard the third beast say, come and see, and I behold, and lo, a black horse, right? This is the black horse of Revelation, right? Part of the prophecies. And he said, and he that sat on him had a pair of balances in his hand. And I heard a voice in the midst of the four beasts say, it's like a measure of wheat for a penny, and 3 measures of barley for a penny, and see thou not hurt the oil and wine, right? And what this is basically saying is that, let me bring it to modern times, modern terms, right? This is basically saying that it's going to cost you your whole day's wage. I know most of us don't get paid daily, right? But imagine you did for a second. You just divide whatever you earn as in a daily wage. What this is saying is that, like, something like a loaf of bread, right, which is seen as a small item, right? It's not the cheapest item. It's not that expensive, right? In terms of item like food and stuff like that, right? What it's saying is that a loaf of bread is going to cost you a day's wages, right? Now that's insane, because like I said, like, in England right now, I'm in England right now, and the bread, you can get for like £1.40, right? Way below what man can earn in a day. Even the man on minimum wage, right, is earning way more than that, right? So yeah, bread is fairly inexpensive, but something as small as bread, wheat, right? Because remember, these man, we just go through the infographics. That all the crops and that's going to be affected. Them being able to grow crops because of the fertilizer and so on and so forth, right? It's going to cost you a loaf of bread is going to cost you a day's wage. So whatever it is that you earn, right? Just imagine that you gotta use that money for a loaf of bread, right? And this bread, when you go into the breakdowns and the words and that, this is enough to feed one person for the day of average appetite. So you're kind of screwed if you've got a family with many mouths to feed and they ain't working. You're kind of screwed, man. Right? Paying £100 for a loaf of bread, £200 for a loaf of bread, whatever it is, right? It's peak, not £1.40, right? And this is the kind of situation we're going to find ourselves in. And I say this is going to hurt. It's going to hurt bare people. That's why people will be dying of famine, because they can't afford food or can't get food. But this is what this war is going to generate, right? Because this is the prophecy of the Heavenly Father, right? So there's that. So 2 Ezra chapter 6 and verse 22, right? It says, and suddenly shall the sown places appear unsown, right? The fields, right? These man's crops is going to be heavily reduced, right? Some man going to go out of business because of that, because they can't make enough money, right? So yeah, some of the sown places are going to appear unsown. There's not going to be no crops. And full storehouses shall suddenly be found empty, right? Your supermarkets and whatnot, right? And I said we saw a bit of that during the pandemic. There's certain things you just couldn't get, and you wouldn't see it you wouldn't see it for time. And some things I haven't returned, you know, but this is gonna be way worse. You know, this is gonna be way worse, man. And you know, if it's even possible, because this is you got to factor this in as well, right? If it's even possible to move around goods and get goods into the store, one, it's not gonna be that much, and two, it's gonna be hell of expensive to get it there, right? Because the price of oil is gonna go up crazy. So just transporting food to the supermarket, right, is gonna mean that the price of those products is gonna be fucking crazy too. Like I said, bread's gonna cost like £100 or whatever, right? And so imagine you want some meat, boy, £600, £700. You got that? I mean, even if I got it, I don't know, I don't think I'd pay it. You know, that's fucking crazy. You know, so yeah, it's just gonna be peak, man. It's just gonna be crazy. All right, so the full storehouses shall suddenly be found empty. Right, and the trumpet shall give a sound, and when every man heareth, they shall be suddenly afraid. It's gonna be a fucking terrifying time, right? Stressful, right? It even tells you here, in verse 24, at that time shall friends fight one against another, right? Because people are gonna be down bad. People are gonna be desperate. So man are gonna go violent, go on rampage, and try and do the whole hunter gatherer thing, right? And try and take what they can take what they can get, by whatever means necessary. So at that time shall friends fight one against another like enemies, and the earth shall stand in fear with those that dwell therein. The springs of the fountain shall stand still, and in 3 hours they shall not run. Right, and water is another issue, right, for certain nations. Water is another issue for certain nations. Right, not necessarily so much for the West, but you see how that rolls, man. Because the Most High is drying up, rivers and reservoirs, lakes, and whatever. He's drying them up, right? We would have a couple of water bans and stuff like that, more in America, in different states and whatever, right? But we even had some here in the UK not too long ago, water bans and that, because we're actually running low. And there's another infographic that was in the chat. I don't think I had it up. But a lot of nations are suffering with water. They're suffering with water issues. So Iran, this war is going to affect that also, right? All right, so that's what I want from that one. So, reading here in Isaiah 15, starting from verse 5, right? It says, behold, saith the Lord Yahweh, I will bring plagues upon the world, the sword, famine, death, and destruction. Right, that's what the Lord's sending, man. Right, that's part of his judgment. For wickedness have exceedingly polluted the whole earth, and their hurtful works are fulfilled. Therefore, saith the Lord Yahweh, I will hold my tongue no more as touching their wickedness, which they profanely commit. Neither will I suffer them in those things in which they wickedly exercise themselves. Behold, the innocent and righteous blood crieth unto me, and the souls of the just complain continually. Right, and that's why it's important, with us brothers, we put up our prayers, man, to condemn this place. Right, the Lord hears that. Right, the lives of the elect, or the men of the Lord, living and dead, they all cry unto the Lord, man. Right, to bring this place down. Right. So therefore, thus saith the Lord, I will surely avenge them and receive unto me all the innocent blood from among them. Behold, my people is dead as a flock to the slaughter. I will not suffer them now to dwell in the land of Egypt. And this is why we know we're close, man. We're close to getting the hell out of here. Because the Lord is kicking off this conflict, pretty much. And although it's not going to just happen overnight, we know there's going to be a process of time. We know the MOTB is going to be, has to be issued, globally. Right, and from the effects of what's going on right now, you can see that happening, because people are going to be desperate. People are going to be in a difficult situation, and all the threats of terrorism, all these different types of things. Esau's going to want to introduce this thing to clamp down on that's why getting the whole digital ID ready. To clamp down on people's identities and all these different types of things. So you can see him using this situation, because that's what Esau does. He creates situations to use them against people, right? He never let a good what's it saying, man? Shit, what's that? Never let something go to waste. I can't remember the word now. But basically, never let, these events go to waste, man. No, they're gonna capitalize on these events, man, because they're orchestrating them, right? And so they're gonna use this as another stepping stone to get people to take the mark of the beast. All right. So, never let a good crisis go to waste. Crisis, that was it. Never let a good crisis go to waste. Right. That's their mottos, man. Right. So that's what they're gonna be doing. Right. Where was I? Verse 11 says, "But I will bring them with a mighty hand and a stretched out arm and smite Egypt with plagues as before." Right, Egypt is referring to America, right? "And I will destroy all the land thereof. Egypt shall mourn, and the foundation of it shall be smitten with the plague and punishment that God shall bring upon it. And they that till the ground shall mourn, for their seed shall fail through the blasting and hail, and with a fearful constellation." Right, and we've covered this over years since we've been in this truth, right? All these issues they've had with growing crops and that, but the bad harvests and stuff like that because of the hail and the fires and whatever, floodings. Right, we've seen all that happen. So the Lord has been actively doing this against America for a long time, and not just in America, in other parts of the world, right? So the world is not in a great stable position, So just other events that take place is really screwing everyone up basically. Right, it's going to make it very difficult for them to survive when the Lord opens up the floodgates and all hell breaks loose. Right, they're not going to be able to sustain themselves. Right. So woe to the world and them that dwell therein, for the sword and their destruction draweth nigh. And one people shall stand up and fight against another, and swords in their hands. Right, people are going to turn on each other because of desperation. Right, for there shall be sedition among men, and invading one another. They shall not regard their kings or princes. And it's already been seen that these people in these different nations, man, are fed up with their governments. Right, so they are becoming more rebellious even as we speak. So in the time, during that time specifically, right, we're going to have large contingencies of people just going rogue, basically, innit? Not abiding by the law, right? And just doing what they want to do. Okay? So they should not regard their kings or princes, and the course of their actions shall stand in their power. A man shall desire to go into a city and shall not be able, for because of their pride the cities shall be troubled, the houses shall be destroyed, and men shall be afraid. A man shall have no pity upon his neighbor, but shall destroy their houses with the sword, and spoil their goods because of the lack of bread and for great tribulation. Right, so all these things on both sides is bringing, man, to bring about the destruction of these nations, right, to fulfill prophecy. Okay? This is Ecclesiastes chapter 12. Ecclesiastes 12 and 4 says, "The door shall be shut in the street, and when the sound of grinding is low, and he shall rise up at the voice of the bird, and all the daughters of music shall be brought low." Right? So again, the doors in the streets are going to be shut, and grinding, i.e. work, people working is going to be brought low. And that's already been taking place. People Esau been making people redundant, just getting rid of them, right? Because they got the AI and robots coming in now, so they just don't need them, right? So they're just shutting up shop, or shutting buildings down because they don't need the building no more. They could do online or whatever. People just get into place, and there's no real jobs out there that they can replace it with, right? So it's already been reduced. Work is already being reduced, right? And companies are going bust. These smaller companies, even some of these bigger companies that can't just can't quite hang on, right, to these mega corporations. You know what I mean? Only the mega corporations are doing well. So that's already started happening. But obviously, throughout this war, right, these things are going to escalate. More and more and more. More places are going to shut down because they can't afford to stay open because the cost of doing business is too much. The energy bills, electricity, the gas. You want to import something, then them tanker costs is going to be crazy. You know how crazy it was during the pandemic. Right, and that's if they've got the oil to move it, to get the ship to get there, So it's just going to be crazy. Mostly small businesses, medium businesses, even some of these large, like a lot of these large businesses, they're going to go under. And all that's going to be left is these mega corporations, and they don't need people. They got AI and robots and shit. Amazon just lay off a whole bunch of people. And now, oh no, they don't fit the culture anymore or some bullshit. No, you just don't fucking need them, and you don't care what happens to them after you sack them. You know what I mean? You want to save money, and so you're gonna have your AI do a lot of the tasks and whatever. These men don't care about people. These men are not humanitarians and nothing like that. These men act like they're righteous, but they don't care about people. They don't care about the planet. This is bullshit. They're just trying to earn more money and gain more power. That's all it is. Because elites run them. All right? But that's how sad the state of affairs is going to be. All right? I got, was it one more here before we close up, right? This is from Ezekiel chapter 5. And yeah, verse 16 says, when I shall send upon them the evil hours of famine, right, which shall be for their destruction, right? This is not going back now. Once Most High shot these arrows, right, and like the Lord said, they don't go back, right? The Lord's He's doing all this to end you. This is the whole purpose of all these things that's happening, is to bring an end to your kingdom. That's why there is no going back. There is no revival. There is no make America great again. None of these things are going to happen, because the Lord is doing all these things to the end is your destruction, right? So when I shall send upon them the evil arrows of famine, which shall be for their destruction, and which I will send to destroy you, I will increase this famine upon you and will break your staff of bread. He gonna break your staff of bread. He gonna, he gonna take the food away from you, man. You ain't got the ability to eat. Like I said, these elites are right. I know, we know they got their bunkers and they got their stocks and that kind of stuff. And even some of you bug outs with the with the underground bunkers and whatever. You got some food, tin cans, tin cans or whatever. You might be all right for a little bit, of where whatever. But most of these people, man, they're going to be suffering. They're going to be struggling. They're going to be fighting one another to get what they can get. Whether it be food, water, medication, whatever, because it's all gonna be hard to get, and all gonna be hell of expensive, and all gonna require you to have the mark of the beast to be able to buy or sell these things anyway. Because what ended up happening, the government is stepping, just like in World War II, I think it was, where they brought the rationing system in, right? It was there to regulate the prices, right? So people could everyone could get. It wasn't just the rich that could afford it, right? Because prices go up. The only people that can afford it are the rich. But what about the poor? The majority of the country is poor, just like it is now. The majority of people in these nations are poor. How can they buy anything? So that they stepped in to control the prices and gave you a ration book to receive, to make sure that everybody got. And the same thing, they'll do the same thing now. Okay, when this all kicks off, right? But the requirement isn't going to be a ration book. You don't get it stamped and whatever. No, you're going to have a RFID chip in your hand and your forehead, just like Revelation 13 tells you, right? Sorry, 16 tells you, right? And you're going to make purchases with this, right? You're gonna make purchases. Actually, my brain fighting on a minute. It is 13, isn't it? It's 13 and 16. That's why I'm brain fighting, right? But let me read it, right? Revelation 13 and 16. And he calls you all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand or in their foreheads, right? So you can see this is where it's going. Right? And that no man might buy or sell save he that had the mark or the name of the beast or the number of his name. Right? So that would be the condition of you to get your rations. Right? If Esau can even secure that for you, because I doubt that, especially over a period of time. I doubt that. But I guess you're gonna have to have the opportunity to get it if they have got, right? I guess, but yeah, but this is where it's heading to, man, because of the seriousness of the situation, because of the famine the Lord is bringing upon this place, man, all the problems, all the plagues, right? So yeah, so the Lord said, "You gotta break your staff of bread," right? So verse 17, I will send upon you famine and evil beasts, and they shall bereave thee, and pestilence and blood shall pass through thee. I will bring the sword upon thee. I, the Lord, have spoken it. Right? So we all know this is going to grow into a world war, and people are going to get mashed up, man. Okay, more you people are going to be drafted in to go fight in the Middle East, and you're going to have different cities are going to be attacked by, other nations or whatever. So people are going to get mashed up, man. And people are going to be scared and frightened and desperate. And obviously, the government's going to want to control or try and control the situation the best it can. And a lot of you are going to want to go along with the government because you don't see no other way, innit? But there's gonna be large contingencies that are just like, fuck the government. We're gonna do this. We're gonna ride out. We're gonna do this and do that. Act unlawfully. They're just gonna do what they want to do, right? So there's gonna be blood in the streets in every nation, every city. Like I said, this is all prophecy. This is why we're seeing what we're seeing right now, and this is what's gonna occur after these days. Because of this, right? So I'm gonna end it there. Lord willing, this was edifying, and I'll catch you brothers and sisters on the next video. Until then, I say shalom.